Well, everyone, we just want to thank you for joining us this Sunday. We're so excited about being in the house of the Lord. Well, as you know, these times are very uncertain. We have all these different mandates, and we certainly have all these different rules. And we're also really excited about us slowly being able to get together as a church family. And we've been talking about Jesus and how he encountered his disciples as he went after the cross, as he was trying to establish his church after the cross. And we talked the first time about how the disciples, they were totally afraid, and they lived in fear. And Jesus came to them and just sat down and said, hey, listen, peace be with you. You need to have peace. It's all going to be okay. I am the Messiah. I have risen from the dead. And then the second encounter with Thomas that we talked about last week was all about this idea of doubt and being in the wrong place at the right time. And we kind of discussed what it means to be there. And that's where these disciples, they kind of find themselves. They have had their fear addressed, and they've had their doubt addressed, and they've got some clarity because God has kind of said, listen, I'm going to send you out. As God sent me, I'm going to send you. But with that clarity came actually quite a bit of uncertainty. John chapter 20 and verse 21, the thing that Jesus had called them to do, he says this, and Jesus said to them again, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, even so I'm sending you. And I want you to just think about that for a moment. What would it have been like for you to be sitting in the upper room with the disciples, and you have had this encounter with Christ, he's risen from the dead, and he makes this statement to you? It's probably something they had no idea that they were going to do. In other words, they thought the Messiah was going to raise from the dead, possibly, and that they would be ruling and reigning with him. There would be no separation from him after this point. They thought they had already lost him, and now he's back. And so they're very uncertain in their thinking. They're wondering what this looks like. I'm sure if you are like me, you've been in this place before. Like, what does God have for me? Or what is my life all about? I know that I'm supposed to be living in the will of God, but I just don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, I'm sure through these times of uncertainty, a lot of things start to take place in their lives. And I think in our lives, the same thing is true. Uncertainty is one of those things that cause us to do all kinds of crazy things. I think of some things like work or let's take, for example, marriage. When you were getting married, you in your mind thought, I'm in love with my wife, or I'm in love with my husband, and we're going to live happily ever after together. I mean, on that wedding day, you saw her walking down the aisle, and you thought all these wonderful, wonderful things. You thought you had this incredible amount of clarity. But the problem with that clarity is it really isn't as clear as you think, because the moment the honeymoon was over, you started to realize, oh my goodness, there's a little bit more to this than just bliss or happily ever after. And there are a lot of things in life we find ourselves there. In other words, we have the big picture, but how to make the small picture work is extremely tough. And the disciples, that's where they find themselves. So just think about that for a minute. Think about what they're going through, and then think about what marriage is all about. Think about how you would respond when you find yourself addressing things that you're not fully understanding. I think many of us respond in a lot of different ways. Many of us think that this marriage or this relationship or the situation that we're in that we're uncertain about, we thought it was going to bring us safety and security. We thought it was going to bring us love and being known, but all of a sudden we find ourselves fearful. We find ourselves in this uncertain world, and we wonder what we're supposed to do about it. Well, these disciples, they find themselves here, and they're wondering what they're supposed to do, and all of a sudden they make a decision to go do something. And I want to ask you the question, what do you do? What do you do when you find yourself uncertain, when you find yourself in a place where you're really not sure what you're supposed to do, but you have crystal clarity on the big picture? The details are where you're getting caught up. For some people in marriage, for example, when things start getting hard or difficult, what do? We respond in a lot of different ways. Well, some of us respond in anger. I mean, let's just face it. When we are in an uncertain spot, a lot of us find ourselves angry. We find ourselves frustrated. And so we respond with anger or frustration. A lot of people find themselves responding to uneasiness by escaping. Some of us want to run away or go somewhere else. Some of us want to go out to the garage. We want to go hang out with our buddies. Ladies might choose to say, hey, listen, I just need to go shopping and I need to get away. But the reality is we find ourselves doing some of these things, but they really don't bring a lot of joy to our lives. One of the things that many people do when they find themselves frustrated or really uncertain in life is they have a tendency to go back to what they're used to. They have a tendency to go someplace that's a safe place, a place that they used to be at or used to do before, because that brings some confidence in their lives. You know, when I think about that, I think about teenagers and what they do sometimes with conflict, or even some young adults, or even maybe you as an older adult. And when you think about where you go, I think about some things like this. When I deal with teenagers, sometimes they're like, I just want to go play a video game for 4 hours and just zone out. I want to go on a Netflix binge and find myself completely oblivious to all that's going on around me. Some of us may choose to hike, we may choose to fish, we may choose to work, but all of us have these things that we do. I want you to think about this. It's a place where we can feel certain, where we can feel confident, where we can feel comfortable. We find ourselves in these places, a place where we feel safe. Well, the disciples are no different. They hear this challenge from the Lord. They have been, again, addressed with their fear. They've addressed their doubt, and now they've got this grandiose thing saying, hey, I'm going to send you out. Just as the Lord, that God has sent me here for you, I'm going to send you out. And all of a sudden, this anxiety, I'm sure, came across them. And so what do? They actually get up and they go back to what they were used to. They get up and they go home. They get out of their seats, they leave the upper chamber, and they find themselves going to a place that's a little different. It's back to Galilee. Well, I don't know about you, but when I think of Galilee or going home, I think about what God has for us in the world of a new location. What is it about somewhere new? What is it about going home? What is it about that old thing that makes us so comfortable? Well, fishing for them was what they liked to do. And so they went back to Galilee because their life was all about fishing. They knew fishing. They were comfortable with fishing. They were confident with fishing. And I just want you to know that's one of the things that I can completely relate to. Because when I think about getting comfortable, when I think about what it takes to get back to where I feel like I'm in control, I go fishing. Fishing is that thing that, for me, is a safe place. It's a place that I know. There is no question that if you ask me how to catch fish in Bristol Bay, I know how to do it. Matter of fact, I'm so confident that I can do it that I don't stress about it at all. There is absolutely no uncertainty in my life. Absolutely none. So think about this. This is what the disciples are doing. They're getting ready to go. They wake up in the morning. John records this. They get up in the evening, not in the morning, in the evening, and they say, hey, we're going to go fishing. We're going to go out and we're going to catch ourselves some fish. Now, if you know anything about fishing, fishing is a place where all kinds of uncertainty can happen, but yet as a fisherman, we can feel completely confident what we do. Why are we confident? Well, there's lots of reasons why we're confident. One of the reasons why we find ourselves confident is because we know how to catch fish. We know how the net works. We know how to mend a net. We know how to repair a net. We know how all there is to know when it comes to fishing. For me, I am a natural at fixing things, and so I'm a fixer. Fishing is perfect for me. If something breaks down, they call Ron. I know how to fix it. If there's a situation on the beach that happens that we don't understand, who do they call? They call Ron because I know how to fix it. I don't know about you, but I like being in a safe place when I'm feeling uncertain. I actually thrive in that world. As a matter of fact, it makes me have peace. And there's no doubt the disciples, they found themselves here because they were confident about what God had for them. Now, there's some positives and negatives to this place that we go. Sometimes we can go and say, hey, I'm going to go to this uncomfortable or this place that I'm comfortable with so I can Just take a moment to think. And it seems like the right answer. But for a lot of us, it's really not. We choose these things, but we're only just escaping the problems that we're finding ourselves in. And that's kind of what the disciples end up doing. They end up finding themselves in a completely different position, in a different place, ready to do something that they're used to doing, but at the same time, they don't really know what that might look like. They don't really know what God has for them. So think about that for a moment. I want to ask you, where are you? In these uncertain COVID-19 times, in these times when you find yourself uncertain, when you find yourself wondering what God would have for you, or maybe even where your job's going or what your life's going, where do you turn? Do you turn back to alcohol? Do you turn back to a vice? Do you find yourself doing things that you feel comfortable with, but you know aren't going to bring you any joy or any peace or any absolute calmness? Well, the disciples kind of find themselves here in this story. They go out fishing, and they fish all night long. Now, for me, I can completely understand this situation. Oftentimes, I find myself going out fishing, and I love fishing just for the cause of fishing, but ultimately, I love fishing because I like to catch fish. I mean, fishing is what we do. And so the disciples, they're out fishing. They're out on the boat. They're all night long. They're not dressed in gear like this. Obviously, in Israel, the weather's a little different than Alaska, where we would put rain gear on to go fishing because it's very much colder. There, they actually strip down to the skivvies. And they got down in their underclothes, and they're out there working as men because they don't want to have the smell of fish on them. They don't want to be ruining their clothes. And so that's what they did at this time. And they're out fishing, and they fish all night long. They find themselves totally frustrated. In other words, a place where they thought they were going to get security, the place where they thought they were going to have some certainty, they don't have it. They end the evening with nothing. And then all of a sudden, from the shoreline, someone yells out, "Hey, are you catching any fish?" And they say, "No, we have had a bad night. We're not catching anything." And the person says, "Hey, cast your net on the other side." Now listen, as a fisherman, if I'm out in the boat fishing and somebody I don't know goes on shore and says, "Hey, do it this way," I just want you to know my natural instinct inside of me is like, who are you? Do you really know how to fish? I've been fishing all night long. Or I might say, why are you getting involved in my life? Like, I don't want to hear it from you. My pride gets lifted up, and I'm like, I don't even want to have anybody give me any advice because I'm going to fix this problem myself. But sometimes, if you're smart and you're in these situations in life, you may choose to listen. You may choose that now is the time to listen because you already are uncertain about your life. You really don't know where you're going. You thought going back to that place where you are was going to bring certainty, but actually it has just brought frustration. And somebody is yelling to you, "Hey, throw your net on the other side. Throw your net on the other side." It seems so simple. Just throw your net on the other side. But for whatever reason, a lot of us struggle. We struggle hearing from someone else. We struggle hearing that God might have a different way, or that God might send someone else to tell us, "Hey, listen, your marriage is going in the wrong direction. Hey, you probably should change the way you're raising your children. Hey, listen, you probably shouldn't go out like that. You're probably going to end up somewhere you don't want to be." I mean, I don't know who's talking to you, and I don't know where you are in these uncertain times. But there's no doubt, we find ourselves here. We often find ourselves here. And yet, Jesus still cried out and said, "Hey, throw your net on the other side." Now, as a fisherman, and if I heard that from the beach, I would probably think, "Hey, I wonder if he saw a fish jump. I wonder if he saw more fish over here. I wonder if he's just like, hey, I see him. I don't know about you, but I've been commercial fishing where we literally watch the fish as they're coming our direction. And if you're here and you're not paying attention, they can swim right past you." Well, I'm sure when they throw their net out on the other side and their net starts to fill with fish, it was probably an amazing time. As a matter of fact, I know what that looks like, and I want you to watch this video because I've experienced what it means to have fish more than ever before. So check this out. Notice this video. Notice how the fish are hitting this net. Now, you know how to understand this circumstance. A little earlier before this, we had caught quite a few fish, but the fish had kind of slowed down to where there weren't very many. And everybody, including myself, went up to the cabin. If you'll notice, I'm flying the drone that's taking the film. And the reason why I'm flying the drone is because I'm thinking it's a great day to just take a film of what's going on and what's happening. But the truth is, while I'm up there, the fish show up. And the fish are blowing the net up, and the excitement is overwhelming because the guys, they really aren't aware of what's happening. They're cleaning the fish up, and before you know it, these fish are everywhere. Well, I'm sure the disciples, they were overwhelmed. I mean, 153 fish from zero back in with the nets that they were using and what they were doing had to be amazing. And all of a sudden, John says to Peter, "Hey, I think that's Jesus." And Peter puts his clothes on, jumps in the water, and swims to shore as fast as he can, while the other guys drag the net into the boat and drag it to shore. And so we have this encounter, this idea of frustration and this idea of uncertainty and this idea of questioning what's happening. And all of a sudden, we've got these answers. We have Jesus. He has shown up. He is there. And so what does he do? Jesus says, "Hey, listen, Peter, have breakfast with me." So what does he do? He walks over and he sits down with Jesus and he says, "Listen, let's have breakfast together. Let's just have a conversation. Bring some of those fish that you caught and let's eat together. Let's spend some time in fellowship together. And I'm going to give you a little clarity on your life." Now, I don't know about you, but I can imagine the excitement that Peter had. I mean, obviously the man jumped out of his boat. He was 100 yards or so offshore, and he swam the entire distance, not having any regard for his buddies or the fellow disciples that had to actually drag the net into the boat. But he was so excited to see Jesus, he was not willing to wait one moment. In other words, he could not wait to hear from the Lord. He needed some guidance. He needed to be in the presence of Jesus. Guys, when we find ourselves struggling, when we find ourselves wondering what God would have for us, when we know we're Christians and we're supposed to do what's right, or we know the right thing to do, but we just don't know how to get there, when we find ourselves in our marriage struggling, or we find ourselves in our workplace struggling, or we just find ourselves struggling in general about our confidence in ourselves, we oftentimes, again, like I said, we go back to these things like fishing that don't solve the problem, because the problem is solved with Jesus. He is the one in which we should be seeking. And we're going to notice that here in this passage as John starts to write about this encounter between Jesus and Peter. It's in John chapter 21. In this moment, Peter finds himself in this conversation with Jesus. And he says this, Jesus takes this opportunity to kind of take the uncertainty away from Peter and give him certainty. And it's found in John chapter 21 and verse 15. The story starts out like this, and I'd like to read it to you. Here we go. That's John chapter 21 and verse 15. "And when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?'" Now, for a fisherman, we can assume a lot of things from this conversation. Do you love me more than what? Do you love me more than these fish that you caught that you're so excited about? Do you love me more than these fish? Do you love me more than what you know how to do? Or maybe it was, Peter, do you love me more than these brethren that are around us having breakfast? Do you love me more than your buddies, your brothers in Christ? Do you love me more than them? Do you love me more than your circumstance that you find yourself in? More than your safe space? more than your old life? Do you love me more than the uncertainty that you find yourself in? This is a great question because all of us, if we're smart, we would answer this question, of course so. And that's exactly what Jesus does, or what Peter does. Peter answers this question just like you and I would probably think we would answer the question, which is, of course, Jesus, I love you. He said to them, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And then he makes this statement, feed my lambs. Feed my lambs. Now, of course, remember, they've just caught all of these fish. Is Peter thinking in his mind, well, I'll catch fish because I can feed these lambs. I could feed the people if I would just go fishing. No. Jesus isn't talking about that at all. Jesus is talking about feeding his lambs, the lost, those who are his creation. Feed them with what? The bread of life. This is what Jesus is wanting. He's bringing a certainty in an uncertain time. He's bringing clarity to a time of uncertainty. That's what Jesus is doing. And notice he does it again. In John 21:16, he continues and says this. He said to him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like it when people ask me a question twice. I don't like it when people start addressing things like, I already heard you say that, Jesus. I can see Peter now. And he says, Peter says what I would say, Jesus, you know that I love you. And he says what? Tend to my sheep. In other words, take care of my sheep. Take care of my people. When I think about that, I think to myself, this doesn't seem like it's answering his questions of uncertainty. He's really not being specific. He's kind of being broad. But then he does it a third time. He says this, and he said unto him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter makes this statement. He was grieved because he had said to him a third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. I want you to understand something. Uncertainty can only be overcome with certainty. When I hear this story, I think about what is certain about this conversation. What is it that Jesus was trying to convey? Was it to feed his sheep, to tend to his lamb, to take care of others? What was it that Jesus was getting Peter to focus on? And then you start to realize it's one thing. It's Peter. Do you love me? Peter, do you love me? It's not about tend my sheep. It's about Peter, do you love me? I'm going to ask you a question. When you find yourselves in these uncertain times, when you find yourself struggling where you know the big picture, but you just don't know the details. You know your marriage is supposed to be fantastic, but you just can't make it work. You know that your children are what you're supposed to raise to follow Jesus, but it's just struggling. They're just not, it's not happening. You know at work you're supposed to be a great worker and you're supposed to do your best, but you're finding yourself just really struggling. Maybe you're at home during this COVID-19 thing and you're like, I know I'm supposed to be home taking care of my kids and teaching them in school, but it's just not working. I want you to know something. The answer is not the fix. The answer is, do you love Jesus? I know it seems generic, and I think it almost sounds like a Jesus answer, but I'm here to tell you it's really more than that. Do you love me? Do you love Jesus? Think of it this way, husband. What if Jesus was asking you this question? Do you love me more than your selfishness? And you say, yes, Jesus, I love you. I go to church every Sunday. I make sure my family's in church. And he says, love your wife. And then the second time he says, husband, do you love me more than your toys, more than your hobbies, more than all the things that are idols in your life? Do you love me? And you say, Lord, sure, absolutely, I love you. You know I love you. And he says, sacrifice for your wife. And you're like, I understand, Jesus, but it's so difficult. And Jesus is like, no, third time. Do you love me? Do you love me? And of course, we're frustrated at this point. We're saying, of course, Jesus, we love you. We go to church, we sacrifice, we do these things. And the truth is this, Jesus is saying, do you love me with all of your emotions and all of yourself and everything about you? Are you fully committed to me? And we say, Lord, you know our hearts. You know we want to love you. You know we love you. And he says, love your wife as I have loved the church and gave myself up for her. Whoa. Whoa. What a challenge. What a thought. The uncertainty of marriage, the uncertainty of all that happens, and all of a sudden it's a simple question. Do you love Jesus? Do you find yourself there? I don't know what your circumstance is, but I do know this, that in the circumstance of marriage and the circumstances that you find yourself in, I guarantee you can answer that question. Do you love me? Wives, I want to ask you the same question. When you say, hey, this marriage is this difficult, I want you to think about this. Jesus is asking you, do you love me more than your selfishness? And you say, of course, Jesus, I love you. And what does he say? Submit to your husband. Ouch. But Lord, but Lord, right? And so what does he say? He says, wives, do you love me more than your emotions, more than your selfishness, more than your emotions? And you say, sure, Lord. Yes, absolutely, Lord. Lord, I go to church on Sunday. I do what's right. I follow all the rules. I'm doing my best. And he says, listen, I want you to support your husband. So Jesus then says it again to you. Wives, do you love me? Do you love me with your whole heart? And so we say, ladies, men, ladies, we say this, Lord, you know I love you. Lord, you know that I love you. I absolutely love you. I've given my life to you. And he says this, respect your husband. You see, it's not an answer we were expecting. We were expecting something different. We were expecting to hear something that was not related to something that we are struggling with. And here God is saying, listen, I want you to understand it. If you love me, you keep my commandments. If you love me, you do my will. If you love me, then everything else falls in place. Husbands, wives, listen to me. Marriage is like that. But it's not just marriage, it's life. Children are the same way. God's asking children the same thing. Do you love me? Obey your parents. Do you love me? Submit to your parents. Do you love me? Honor your parents. I mean, it goes on and on and on. This idea of love brings such clarity to our uncertain lives and our uncertain worlds. Christians, if Jesus was asking you today, do you love me? Do you love me? We would say, yes, Lord, we love you. And he would say, share my love with others. Share my love with others. You find yourself in an uncertain world, in an uncertain place. Do you love me? So he asks us a second time, Christian, do you love me? Do you love me more than everything else that's distracting you from what I have for you? And we say, yes, Lord, we love you. We love you. You know that we love you. And what does he say? Love others as I have loved you. Forgive others as I've forgiven you. Wow. Wow, we're taken back. We don't know whether we like that. Because, Lord, you certainly don't know my circumstance. I mean, there's other things going on you just don't have an understanding about. That's where you find yourself. But the truth is this, God has the answer. Do you love me? And Christian, he asks the third time, do you love me? And we say, Lord, you know our hearts. You know that we love you. And he says what? Be salt, be light, share the gospel with every creature that you come in contact with in your world and in your world of influence. And all of a sudden it hits us right in the heart. And we start realizing, do we really love Jesus? Is the uncertainty that we find ourselves in coming because we have clarity, we know the big picture, we are just unwilling to submit to the very smallest facet of what it means to be a Christian, and that is this: do you love me? do you love me? Jesus says the third time, do you love me? Church, I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid we have to ask ourselves this question. Have we lost our first love? Have we lost what it means to truly love Jesus? Peter, in this circumstance where he found himself going back to what he knew, found himself going back to what he thought was what he understood and what he was certain about. And when Jesus allowed uncertainty to even come into what he thought he knew, he addressed him with this very powerful and clear and concise statement, do you love me? So my question for you today is this. In this COVID-19 struggle, in this thing we're facing, in this place we find ourselves, when Jesus is calling you and talking to you and saying, do you love me? How are you responding? Are you really listening to the words that he's saying? Does he have to say it time and time and time again? For Peter, it took 3 times for him to finally be so frustrated. He says, of course, Jesus, I love you. I'm afraid we oftentimes are told countless time and time again. And because we don't truly put our faith and trust in love in Christ, we find ourselves in an uncertain world. We find ourselves feeling very uncomfortable. We find ourselves in fear. We find ourselves in doubt. We find ourselves where the disciples had been, because that's exactly what God does. He wants us to come to a point where we hear the words, do you love me? Do you love me? Church, the problem of uncertainty is not a lack of knowledge. The problem with uncertainty is pursuing Jesus. And if you've been listening here today as I've been sharing the story about John and Peter and their encounter with Christ and their struggle for uncertainty, I hope that you'll understand something, that the only way in which you and I can feel certain is to give our lives to Jesus Christ. What do I mean when I say give our lives to Jesus Christ? What I mean is this. We have to fully confess that Jesus is Lord. We have to fully believe in our heart that he rose from the dead. And that's what these disciples were struggling with. They were struggling with the concept of what actually had happened and what it meant in their lives. It was an idea of full and complete surrender, and that's what brought clarity, and that is what brought to them certainty. And Jesus was trying to explain that to them. So if you're watching here by television or by social media, or you're out in the parking lot watching, and you've never given your life to Christ, if you've never had clarity on your eternal security, in other words, where you're going to spend eternity, I want to give you a chance to do that right now. The Bible says this: if we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord, and we believe in our heart that he has risen from the dead, the Bible says when we do that, when we place our faith and trust in him and we turn from our sin, we will have eternal life, the certainty that comes with salvation. So if you haven't done that here today, I would love to just share with you just a little prayer, something you could do in your heart and your mind. The prayer is not what saves you. It is believing in the statements that will save you. But it would be something like this. Dear Jesus, I know that I'm a sinner. Lord, I repent of my sin. Father, I believe in my heart and I confess with my mouth that you are Lord. Father, please save me and change me and take me to heaven when I die. If you believe that in your heart, the Bible says that you can know for certainty that you will be saved. I would love to encourage you to do that today.
Hey everybody, Pastor Ron here. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Here at ABT, we make a big deal about following Jesus. Make sure that you subscribe and hit our notification bell so that you don't miss any of our upcoming video content. Also, if you'd like to support this ministry, please click Donate Now. Thanks for watching.